is the Big O Show. This is the Big O Show.
All right, there he is, locked and loaded and ready to go. How you feeling, my man? You feeling good?
I'm good. It's week 2 of vacation. We are doing well over here, getting a little sun. Fielding a handful of questions about Odell Beckham. That's a weird one. So where do you want to start, Big O?
I'm going to start with this. He was considered geeky. He was considered different. Not the ogre type head coach. More like a different kind of coach, witty, dry humor. And here's Mike McDaniel in the UFC fight this weekend here in Miami. And he's running into Aaron Donald. And he's joking around, hugging with Aaron Donald, making him laugh. And so do we come full circle and say, you know, we're so used to the ogre and the kind of coaches that we all grew up with that just scream at you from the second you get out of bed to the second you leave the facility. They're just drill sergeants and all that shit. And here comes Mike McDaniel, a different kind of coach, a coach that some people said, hey, he's kind of geeky. He's, kind of, different. Is he now one of the coolest coaches in the NFL? When you're seeing this scene with a player that didn't play for him, in fact, played for a rival for his team in the NFC, and he's in Miami, and look at that relationship with Aaron Donald. How do you view Mike McDaniel a year later after he bursted onto the scene?
Oh yeah, we've spoken about this a handful of times. I think, but largely, we can largely credit McDaniel himself for making Miami kind of a destination, right? Like Miami's always been a destination for a variety of reasons, whether it's weather, taxes, history, all that.
Retire, bro. Players would retire just like old farts, bro. Come on, let's ourselves. Tax. They knew they weren't winning. You know, in Ndamukong Suh, once when he signed here, they asked him, so why did you sign here? He goes, because they're a progressive team. He couldn't say we win because they don't win jack shit. So it wasn't like he was going to say, oh, well, this is a great franchise. They're winning. They've got Don Shula and, Bob Greasy and Dan Marino. No, bro, they're decades removed from that. So he's like, well, they're a progressive team. That was the only thing he could describe about Miami. Yeah, progressively, they're giving you $20 million a year. Yeah, that's awesome.
First of all, I think players appreciate the sense of humor that McDaniel brings to the job. Who really wants to go to work every day? I mean, you would tolerate Bill Belichick because they win and they've won relentlessly for a long time. But I don't want to deal with that every day for a 7-win team, an 8-win team. We're also talking about, and I'm certainly not somebody. I'm old enough to have been coached hard when I was in, and by coached hard, I don't even necessarily mean coached well at all times, right? Like when I was in high school, I got yelled at. Like we all got yelled at. It's just how that worked. Freshman year basketball, I heard some of the most remarkable strings of expletives, things that I'd never heard before, right? Like that's just how it went down sometimes.
It's the norm.
But that is not this generation of athletes, and a number of coaches have obviously had a great deal of success not being that guy. You don't have to be that guy. McDaniel clearly isn't that guy, and yet he's a hard worker. We were talking about it a couple of weeks ago about him pulling the all-nighters on the Tua tape sessions, but he doesn't that's not like a badge of honor for him. I mean, that was just a side note in a greater conversation about the things you have to do to lift up a player who needs to be lifted up, right? And he's really good at that stuff. And he's not somebody who motivates through, the fiery, break the chalkboard, bang the table. He may not necessarily be that guy. I'm not saying he can't do it, but he's not necessarily that guy. But he clearly motivates through concern for players, and everybody I think around the league understands that he has a legitimate commitment to his guys and his players, and he's just good at the building you up stuff. And I think more and more players are interested in that. Plus, these are professional athletes, and like the Hoosier shit isn't going to work. The Bob Knight shit isn't going to work with guys who are making like $18 million, $20 million. They don't have to tolerate it. Nobody signs up for that stuff. There's study after study that'll tell you that it's not particularly effective relative to any other approach to coaching. So I really appreciate him
in anything anymore. It just doesn't help in anything anymore. Not the way they're wired nowadays. They're not wired even as a parent. If you're an abusive parent, there's a good chance you'll probably lose your kid.
Yeah.
We grew up with parents that could be complete hard asses, and then we hug and kiss 5 minutes later. You know what I mean? That's just kind of the way it is, but it would just roll off our backs. It would be something that we were kind of used to because it was your teacher berating you. It was your coach berating you. Then it was your parent berating you. And it was kind of like, that's just the way it was back in the day. That was just, everything was, bro, I was paddled in school. They don't do that anymore, man. In junior high, I had
somebody would end up in jail. Yeah.
I had an assistant principal in junior high that had a paddle in his office hanging from the wall that had holes drilled into it for aerodynamics.
Yeah.
Okay. And then it said Toyota on it. He would tell you to put your hands on the table, look to the wall, and then he'd say, "You want it? You asked for it? You got it. Whack! Toyota." Okay? That's how he would, that's every time he'd whack you, he'd say that same line from the commercial. Because you youngins don't know what I'm talking about, but that's how a Toyota commercial used to end. You want it, you asked for it, you got it, Toyota, and whack, whack. Imagine an assistant principal doing that nowadays.
Oh, they wouldn't last a day. Yeah, I would imagine that young O, back when you were little O, never found trouble. So that was never you. Never. You were never in that predicament.
Never. Never. I never experienced Toyota. Of course not. I mean, I experienced the Toyota before I actually sat in the Toyota. That's the
I would, by the way, I would love to know what's going on in the conversation between McDaniel and Dom, because we've talked about it. I think he's the funniest guy in the NFL. Okay. And some of my favorite moments in the entire NFL last season were when McDaniel was delivering, again, one of those like Mitch Hedberg, super dry, but like absolutely hilarious jokes in front of a room full of reporters, and nobody would laugh. It made the whole damn thing funnier that like nobody's giggling in the background because they're not, he's not really selling the joke exactly, but he's so funny. He is just outrageously funny. I love him.
Not telling Justin Fields, stop it.
Okay? So good.
Yeah, it's just, it doesn't get better than that. But he is amazing. All right, let's move over to Baltimore. Does it make sense what they did? Are they desperately trying to reach Lamar Jackson? Because the Jets wanted him, but they weren't willing to offer that much money, and to offer $15 million, then another $3 million in incentives. I find that to be very crazy, considering he is an unreliable human being.
Right.
That's my problem most of all with Odell Beckham. He cannot be relied on in any way, shape, or form. To me, him and Kyrie Irving are kind of the same ilk. You know what I'm saying? It's just, I get it, dude. I know the Lord bless them. I know they're super talented, but they're also super unreliable physically, mentally, whatever it is. How do you read into this move?
Well, first of all, the pure football issue with Odell Beckham right now is that he's had 2 ACL surgeries, and there's been a lot of reporting around the notion that the first one didn't go particularly well. And then he tears the ACL again in the Super Bowl. And he was no question, he's playing well for the Rams. We're not talking about peak of his powers, Odell, before the second injury, but 2 ACLs is a lot. And the track record of athletes across sports coming back from like a second ACL, that's a short list of guys, by the way. But that was like the end of Michael Redd's career in the NBA. There's just not a lot of guys. that bounce back from a second ACL injury. So this is fair amount of money over one season for a guy coming off. Again, it's not the fact of an ACL injury. It's the fact that it happened twice. I think it's a very low probability outcome for him to be a legitimately great player again in the NFL. So like in that respect, I don't put him in Kyrie's category necessarily, because I know that at least when Kyrie Irving is out there on the floor, he's one of the greatest ball handlers that the league has ever seen, and like he's that right now. I don't know what Odell Beckham is right now, but I'm not willing to assume that he's going to be a wide receiver one. He does step into a situation where there's a ton of targets available. Mark Andrews, obviously the number one receiver there. We don't yet know the status of Rashad Bateman, but Odell Beckham is going to command, there's not that many places he could land where you could entirely build the case that he's going to see 100 targets. Now he would have to stay healthy, which is not a safe bet, but at least it's a place where a lot of targets were available. They were not available with the Jets. And I know that Aaron Rodgers has had
get 100. He's not going to get 100 targets with the Ravens either, because they run a lot. And
right.
And let me tell you something. Here's one thing that I'm very interested in. I don't think you can just be a receiver in this offense with that specific quarterback and just run 9 routes all day. You're going to have to run a lot of underneath stuff.
Listen, I have no reason. I have no reason to think that Odell can get himself open downfield anymore. Like why, like, again, we have to set aside this idea that he's going to be the version of Odell Beckham that you saw even with the Rams. Two ACLs is usually a career ender, often a career ender. That's usually lights out. So if he comes back and he's effective as an underneath receiver, if he can be Bob Woods, that's a great comeback from a second ACL. But I don't view him, and I bet
the problem with that, I don't think he does well in traffic. I don't think he's a guy that wants to take on hits. So if you're going to be running slants into the middle of the field and guys are going to be taking shots at you and you're coming back from an knee injury, I just don't see that as a good combo for him. Whereas in a perfect world for him, you'd like to kind of keep him out on the edge and just have him run deep routes a lot or comebacks or things like that. But getting complicated in the middle of the field, I think that's not – we'll see if he wants to do it. We'll see if he can last doing it. We'll see if he stays comfortable doing that. We'll see if he keeps his head on straight without complaining, because he's not going to have the amount of targets that he normally has in an offense, because this is an offense that is dictated by the running and throwing to your tight end. Mark Andrews is going to get the top targets, not the receivers in this offense. And this is why, people say, well, they got to get him better weapons. Yeah, but even if you get him better weapons, will he throw it to a lot to them, or will he play his game? And his game doesn't really require to throw to the outsides that much.
Yeah, well, if he's just there to get deep, number one, again, I don't know that he can do it anymore. And number two, he's not going to do it better than Hollywood Brown did. His hands are obviously better, but his actual ability to separate, again, coming off a second major knee injury, it just seems really unlikely to me. This is a little bit of an indictment of this year's free agent class at receiver, obviously, right? There was just nobody there. It's guys you had to trade for. This was, the Bears tried to get out in front of it by making the questionable deal for Chase Claypool last year and the unquestionably great deal for DJ Moore near the start of free agency. There's just not guys. There's not difference makers that you could sign in this free agent class at receiver. So, man, 15 million, 18 million at Odell. Hopefully this is a player that Lamar wanted. Hopefully this is a little bit of a Valentine to Lamar Jackson. It's enough money that I can imagine it putting the Ravens in a situation where matching an offer to Lamar became difficult. I'm just not sure. He's in my mind certainly not a difference maker, and I think you'll find that you'll talk to Scott Pianowski later in the week. He and I both, and nobody more so than him. I just don't like to bet on players returning from significant injuries, especially when the odds against them in a situation like this are so great. And Scott will be the first to tell you that as a fantasy manager, like, you don't need to run to trouble. You don't need to go out there and find injured or damaged players, because trouble is going to find you. That's the NFL, right? So I'm not particularly bullish on it. I don't think it's a needle mover for the Ravens. It is a splashy signing. I feel like the Jets probably dodged a bullet. And I don't like, there's going to be all kinds of people writing about how, oh, he's a wide receiver 2 for fantasy. He's a wide receiver 3 for fantasy. I don't, he's barely a top 50 guy for me. If that right now, I don't think I'd go out of my way to draft him. Certainly.
I would never draft him on the fantasy side where I needed him. If I can get him to a point where it's a luxury on my bench, then yes. But if I'm drafting him and I'm depending on him, I think that's a terrible move on your part as a fantasy football player, because you can't rely on the unreliable. And so why would you do something like that? That would make no sense to me. Now, if you're in the 12th round or something and you've already got your receivers and he's going to be your 4th or 5th wide receiver or something like that, then okay, take the chance, because if he happens to put together a magical season, boom, you got yourself one hell of a draft pick. But if he doesn't and you picked him earlier, then you just put yourself in a terrible, terrible position.
No, you said it very well. You can't draft your way into a spot where you need him to be good. You have to, you have to take him at a price where, like, if you cut him, you cut him.
Right. Luxury. That's what it is. It's got to be a luxury for you to have him, not a necessity. Are you believing on the Mac Jones thing that they're trying to shop him? I have a hard time believing that, because I don't believe you're going to live on Bailey Zappi. And that would kind of, I think you and I have already talked about this. I don't think they're going to just keep him around, Belichick, that is, just to break the record for Shula. He's 30 regular season wins away. At this pace, it'll take him 4 to 5 years with no.
That's 5 years, yeah. The way they look right now, that's 5 years away.
I don't believe this guy's going to keep Belichick around that long. I think Belichick has 2 years to prove he can get it back on track, or I think they start to move on from Belichick. So I think Mac Jones is his best option, unless he was able to go get, Aaron Rodgers or something like that. Are you believing they're trying to trade Mac Jones? And 2, who the hell would want Mac Jones?
Yeah, I do think Mac Jones is somebody who's probably always tradable. He's still a rookie contract quarterback that has a little bit of value. I just, we haven't seen anything from Mac Jones.
That's the key. What you just said.
Yeah,
a little bit of value, which means the return is not going to be anything that's. You're better off trying to find out.
Right. You're not going to get a first round price tag on Mac Jones, certainly, and that's what you obviously paid. The other thing is he's he's been fine. 2 years ago was fine. He's done nothing to put himself in the conversation with Burrow, with Tua, with Herbert, with all the other young ascending quarterbacks that we can really legitimately feel great about, with Fields, with the best people from his own draft class, with Lawrence. He's not there. He's just simply not there. And he hasn't shown a singular trait. Like, whatever you think of Justin Fields as a passer, he can do some stuff that, like, only 1 or 2 other guys in the league can do. Trevor Lawrence looked like that dude last year, looked like the guy who should have been the consensus #1 pick. And I don't need to retell the story of Tua and Burrow and Herbert. Like, there's a class of young ascending quarterbacks out there, and Mac Jones isn't really in it yet. He's a guy who maybe at the high end he's Derek Carr, and maybe at the low end he's not a starter in the NFL. I'm not sure, but you have invested a couple years in him. So generally speaking, if you don't have a plan, you better stick with what you've actually invested time in, and you've got to go the continuity route. So it wouldn't surprise me if they put his name out there and said, hey, what's the potential return on Mac Jones? And if somebody gave them a particularly interesting offer, if it's, I don't know what that would be. Is that a 2nd round pick? Because I have no idea what that is. Then maybe they consider it. Teams are always doing work on next year's quarterback class and the following year's quarterback class and the next year's quarterback class, right? So there could be somebody out there that they like. He's not, in my mind, he's just somebody who should always be available, because he hasn't shown us any special traits yet.
Yeah, I don't think the Patriots win more than 6 games this year. Seriously, I just don't see it. I'm sorry. I don't see it. I don't even think their defense is as good as it has been the last year or two. And your offense certainly isn't anything. Now, it should be slightly better because Bill O'Brien is way more competent than Matt, bird nest in the face Patricia. But, still, I just don't – their weapons don't scare you. They don't intimidate you. And so it's just one of those things. I do like their running back. I do like the young running back that they got.
Ramondre is fun. They've drafted some other interesting depth chart running backs. You keep hearing like DeAndre Hopkins to the pay. Why on earth would DeAndre Hopkins want to? I mean, what a terrible destination for him. That's super unexciting. I hope he doesn't go there. He would have to come at a huge price tag. I just don't. I don't know how much they can do.
I don't see them spending the capital and then the money on. That's not their MO.
No.
That's not their MO, dude. You know what I mean? Dallas is the one that does shit like that. Actually, not that they have to. I'm not saying they have to, but they're the ones that do the crazy shit like that with receivers. I just.
This is definitely a team paying the price for never ever drafting the receiver position well, right? Like it's been forever.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, it's a horrendous list. It's like a list. That list of like Patriots draft picks at receiver is looking an awful lot like the list of Brown starting quarterbacks that everybody used to publish, right? Like it's just a rogues gallery. It's not great. They haven't done it well. It's been a serious black mark on whatever. Bill Belichick is an all-time Inner Circle Hall of Fame coach, but this is a black mark on his resume.
Up until Tua, we don't have anything to brag about here in Miami after.
That's fair.
Shit, for 20 years, it was just roadkill pretty much overall. All right, what do you got going on Yahoo so folks can check you out, my friend?
Yeah, baseball content is still rolling. The Yahoo Fantasy Football Forecast Pod is still rolling. So we're firing, and we're like 2 weeks out from the NFL draft. So we're gonna have a lot of content around that as well.
Looking forward to it. Follow him on Twitter at Andy Behrens and catch his work there at Yahoo. Andy, as always, thank you, my friend. Appreciate you immensely.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate it.
You got it. There you go. I was at Sports Grill yesterday in Doral because only a couple locations were open yesterday. I believe the one on the by the golf course, and then the Doral location, which I'm lucky, right by my house. So I went, got myself a little chicken parm sandwich. And folks, you can take advantage right now. Remember, you can take the sauces home with you. And listen, they're known for their food, they're known for their service, they're known for their atmosphere. TVs everywhere. The new Doral location is awesome. Their 8th location. And now you can take home their hot sauces, baby. The buffalo sauce, the Miami Heat, the blackberry, the barbecue, the Dale. You can take them home. Today is Monday, the $7 single smash burger. Tuesdays, the $2 tacos. You can choose from chicken, beef, or fish. And on Wednesdays, the kids eat free with the purchase of an adult entree. Go to sportsgrill.com. Check out the games, check out the food, enjoy the friends, the family. And it's all at sportsgrill.com.
This is the Big O Show. This is the Big O Show.